Hey boys and girls, welcome back. We're going to be reading chapter 13 of Running Out of Time. Alright, so page 90. As we wrapped up chapter 12, we learned that Jessie had found the correct route to Indianapolis. She was on Route 37 as Ma had instructed her to find. So, it looked like her luck was going well at this time. So let's see in chapter 13 if her luck holds out as well. Alright, chapter 13, page 90. Ma had said it would probably be a couple of miles before Jessie found a phone. As she walked, Jessie looked around anxiously. What if she passed all the phones because she didn't know what they looked like? But there was little on either side of the big road but grass and fields and an occasional tree. Jessie thought about asking someone, but thought the only people she saw were those zooming by in the fast cars. She wouldn't want to try to stop them. Well, Jessie told herself with forced cheer, if they didn't stop, at least that meant they didn't want to capture her and take her back to Clifton. Jessie's stomach gurgled just then, and she remembered that she hadn't eaten anything since she wasn't sure. Was it lunch yesterday when she ate just like usual in the schoolyard with Mary? As if impatient for Jessie to remember, her stomach rumbled again, louder. Would it be wrong to stop and eat before finding one of those phone things? Now that she was safely outside Clifton, Jessie decided a short break wouldn't matter. She walked a ways looking for a place to sit down, and then she saw a sign that said Crooked Creek and knew she had found it. Crooked Creek ran through Clifton, joining the White River by the mill. Jessie felt sure this was the same winding creek she and Andrew had skipped stones in downriver. It made her feel good to crawl down along a bank where the water flowed toward Clifton. She dropped a twig in. Tell Ma I'm all right. No, say okay. That way she'll know I'm outside, Jessie told the twig as it drifted by. She made a face at her own foolishness. Well, she couldn't help it. It was a little lonely out here. She'd never been alone for so long in all her life, and she'd never eaten a meal all by herself. She wasn't sure she could chew without Nathan screaming for the jam or Mary offering to trade lunches. Jessie sat down on a flat rock by the creek and opened the pack Ma had given her. She had not had time to look before, but now she saw Ma had provided well. There were 2 loaves of bread, firm and pungent, not like the squishy stuff in the truck. That was something else weird about the bread truck, Jessie realized. The bread had no smell. Jessie shrugged and pulled out one of the cloth-wrapped loaves. She saw Ma had also packed beef jerky and some of her N.A.'s cookies, Jessie's favorite. Jessie had one of the cookies first. Who was here to tell her not to? And sorted through the pack to make sure she hadn't missed anything. Under the jerky was a strange container made of something like leather. Jessie would have said the container was a man's purse if it hadn't had all the compartments. At the back were some strips of paper. These had to be money, Jessie decided. She hoped it was still good, with so many banks failing. Mr. Seward was getting finicky about what money he would accept at the store. Most people in Clifton used coins, or bartered anyway. But Jessie might need to find someone to accept these bills outside Clifton. Jessie pulled out one of the bills that said 20 on every end. It didn't have a bank name on it, only Federal Reserve note, the United States of America, and a picture of Andrew Jackson. It looked just like he did in the portrait at home in Clifton. Jessie forgot her worries over whether the money was any good or not. She was so happy to see a familiar face that she kissed President Jackson's picture. She giggled. Imagine if she met President Jackson in person and kissed him like that. Then she remembered, if it was really more than 150 years later, then she thought, Andrew Jackson had died a long time ago. Even the bank problems all the men in Clifton complained about had happened 150 years ago. Maybe there were no money problems now. Maybe there were more. Jessie's grin faded. She concentrated on counting the money, 3 more 20s and a couple that said 1 with George Washington's face on it on the front. At least President Washington's picture was familiar too. Things couldn't be too different in the 1990s if people kept Washington and Andrew Jackson on their money. Pa would be happy to know President Jackson was worth more. He may have won the Revolutionary War, but he was still a Federalist, Pa always said about President Washington. Pa didn't think too highly of the Federalist. But Jessie was confused again. Pa already knew that Andrew Jackson was on a bigger bill than George Washington. Ma and Pa both had used this kind of money before they moved to Clifton. Jessie rubbed her forehead. If only she could get everything straight in her mind. She took the last bill out and slip of paper fell to the ground. Jessie grabbed it before it blew into the creek, and she unfolded the corners. Jessie, by now you should know that what I've told you is true, and maybe you found some explanation for what I don't understand. Know that in spite of everything, Pa and I love you. We never expected or wanted Clifton to turn out the way it did. There should be more than enough money and food here for you. Take care. I'll pray for you the whole time you're away. Ma. At the bottom was the name Isaac Neely, the man Jessie was supposed to tell about the illness, with the number for her to call when she found a phone. Ma had also written out instructions about what Jessie was supposed to say, but Jessie's eyes blurred too much to read that part. Suddenly, she felt unbearably homesick for Ma's familiar writing and Pa's political comments and, yes, even Nathan's screaming for jam at breakfast. Well, she'd be back home again soon as she found a phone and got help for Katie and the others, and she could be brave until then. Jessie put the note back in the area with the paper money and opened other compartments. Coins spilled out of one spot, and Jessie almost knocked the whole pack into the water trying to retrieve them. It was one of these that Jessie would have to put in the phone when she found one, but Ma hadn't been able to tell Jessie what coins to use. It's been so long, Ma had murmured, and things might have changed. Her voice had scared Jessie. Jessie tried not to think about it. She pried open another part of the billfold. This had pages with papers stuck between a slippery surface. Pennsylvania driver's license, the first paper said. It had another one of those picture things that were too realistic to be drawings. She realized the picture was Ma before she moved to Clifton. Ma's light brown hair mostly went to her shoulders, with some of it cut shorter and curled. Jessie couldn't help thinking it was kind of ugly that way, but Ma's blue eyes were kind, as usual, and she was smiling gently as though gazing at Pa. She looked as young as Hannah. Jessie turned to the next page and saw another picture thing, this time showing a baby and a little girl in a short dress. Hannah and Jessie, 1983, it said on the back. This was proof, then, that Jessie had lived in a world outside Clifton. Jessie felt so strange. She snapped the billfold shut and put it back in the pack. She tore off some of the bread and jerky and began eating automatically. All of her life until today, if someone had asked Jessie who she was, she'd have an easy answer. I'm Jessie Kaiser. My pa's a blacksmith here in Clifton, and I've lived here as long as I can remember. We came out from Pennsylvania. But there had been no need for Jessie to tell anyone that, because everyone in Clifton knew her. Now that Jessie knew Clifton wasn't a normal village and it wasn't really 1840, did she know who she was? Could she go back to Clifton after this and live as she always had? Jessie swallowed a bite of bread and it stuck in her throat. She bent over and cupped her hands in the creek, preparing to take a drink. Then she heard yelling, "Stop! Stop it!" Let's see what happens next.